I think Pearl Harbor did emphasise to a lot of Darwin people that perhaps we weren't immune, perhaps we could be bombed or something. Actually, nothing had changed except, as I mentioned, the government at one stage round about then decided that they were not going to open the schools, so the teachers didn't come back. That was a part of the thing. And then, obviously, during the Christmas break, a lot of people decided to take their Christmas break and go south for a while. A lot of them didn't come back because it started to get too dicey for them, so they stayed down south. That no one expected anything. Everyone was caught with their pants down, that's for sure. That's when it probably changed the most because, as I mentioned, there was a couple of American ships came in here. That's when a lot of the Australians got a bit upset about the fact that a lot of these Americans were much more highly paid than we were, and there were fights along Mitchell Street, but very difficult. And most of the shops then started to put up arc mesh all over the windows because they were getting broken every night, sort of thing. So that was part of the build-up, and that kept on going right until Darwin itself was bombed. Then it changed considerably again because people started to worry about what was going to happen to Darwin and what was going to happen to the people in it. I went over to the post office to get the mail, the same as I did every morning. And I met one of the girls I knew. She was killed in the first raid. Oh, well, the first indication was when I was working in the office and we heard these aircraft coming. And I went out in the front of that stone building and looked out and saw the 45 aircraft, all in perfect formation. And that's when I first saw these little silver darts stopping out of the bottom of the aircraft. I didn't realise they were 500-pound bombs, but they just looked like the little silver darts right up there. That's when both myself and whoever else was out and on that veranda, when we went out the back of the office, past what was the police barracks, past the post office, and I can remember, and this is written up somewhere, that as I went across I realised that a bomb had fallen on either side of the bloody net on the tennis court. That what had happened, it must have counteracted each other because the net was still intact, but the great big pile of dirt on top of it. That's all. But then I went over the top of the cliff and stayed down there most of the time trying to protect my head. I wasn't thinking of anything else or anyone else, or just looking after myself. Because I think that when you're put in a position like that, self-protection comes in first. You don't think of any consequences. I never thought that for a minute that I'd be killed or anything like that. It wasn't until quite a few weeks later and I saw photographs of the bombing. I thought, Jesus, I was in the middle of that. Why am I still here? Well, that's when I saw that the harbour was aflame because it was all oil streaked, and the Japs had lit it with incendiary bloody bombs. I saw the Peary sinking. From my point of view, it sank nose first. because when it went down, there was an Oerlikon gun on the stern of the USS Jury, and that was still firing when it went under the water. I've tried to describe this before, but I can't, because from my point of view, I think I was just numb. It never entered my head anything about bombs falling or where they were going to fall. It never entered my head that I might get killed or anything like that. I was just numb. And I think this is normal for when something happens to you for the first time, you don't know what your reaction's going to be. And that was my problem. I don't know what my reaction was going to be. It wasn't until probably 2 or 3 weeks after, when I saw some of the film of the bombing, you know, and that's when I thought, Jesus, I was in the middle of that. And, you know, I thought, hell, I must be bloody lucky. Channel 7 made a documentary on it called Australia's Day of Shame. During that filming of that, I denied it was a day of shame. I just said it was a day that there was a lot of bravery sound. There was a lot of people scared stiff. A lot of people in Darwin at that time were of European descent. And of course a lot of them had memories of the First World War. As soon as bombs started to drop, they got scared stiff. They thought they were in trouble again. So I won't say that they were brave, and they weren't cowards, they were just suffering. That's the way they felt. Because I didn't, to me it didn't sort of worry me. I never even gave it a thought that I might get killed or anything like that. It didn't enter my head. And I was, you know, after bombs fell, I felt numb. You know, I didn't know which way to turn, what to do or anything. So I was quite happy when I went back to start work, and there's old Alfie Stretton and Whitnell and the administrator, and go and do this, go and do that. That was all right, the way I went. And I helped to load the truck with records from the works department down where the railway pulled in on down near the wharf and that sort of thing. So we loaded a lot of records onto the truck and then had to follow them all the way down to Alice Springs. That's where I saw Alf Stretton and the administrator, and we were told to go back to our accommodation and we'd be picked up and evacuated. That didn't eventuate because no one came back to pick us up. They didn't realise they'd missed 4 of the youngest bloody staff until they got to Catherine, and then someone rang up and said, hey, we're missing 4 people. Well, we weren't missing, we were there, but they forgot to pick us up, that's all. And as soon as they found out where we were continued doing what we were doing and loading the stuff onto the back of the truck, which we then put on the back of the train, flat top, and then we sat on top of that while we went down to Laramie on the train. Yeah, there were 4 of them there. But they only had half-charge ammunition, and these bombers were at about 30,000 feet, and the anti-aircraft guns could only get up around about 15,000, so all these were wasted. It was only afterwards when the Zeros started to fly around it. They didn't fly around that much. They did they fly up and down the main street, just firing their cannons as they went. And that was about as far as they get. Because they were also short of fuel. They had to watch themselves. they wouldn't have been able to get back to their aircraft carriers. In fact, a couple of them didn't, or one of them didn't. He crashed onto Melville Island. On these banks, or on the corner here in town, most of them had received some damage. A lot of the shops along Mitchell Street had received some damage as well. And further out on the way towards the hospital some damage had been caused, but no damage was caused to the hospital. I never saw any damage near the hospital. Not that I was ever very close to it, because my main movement was back to the office and back over the cliff and filling up the truck with files from the works department. No, all I saw was one of the police barracks alongside where we were. Part of the roof was missing, but that's all I did notice. I heard afterwards that there was a policeman asleep inside there, but I haven't had any confirmation of that. But the real evacuation didn't start until after the bombing. We used to have to, as public servants, I got allocated to a vehicle, and we had to go around to various places in Darwin and getting women and kids to come with us so we could put them on a plane south and take them out to the airport. Most of them came quite willingly because they wanted to get out. A couple of them didn't, but you didn't waste time on them, because if you wasted time on them, there was someone else that might be you'd be able to help. So it was, a bit dicey at times, but not particularly worrying. But as public servants, we naturally, I suppose, got called air raid wardens and things like putting fires out and that sort of thing, and trying to dig bloody slit trenches, because the first night I spent down the track in an old quarry with some of the blokes from the post office who I knew. One of them had a vehicle, and we were down at the 20-mile quarry, I think it was. Next morning we realised we didn't have enough petrol to go anywhere, so we came back to town, because previously we went past at the corner there of not Bagot Road, before you get there, past where the pub is. There was an army camp there, and one of the corporals said, when we pulled up there, he just said, "Keep on going and don't stop till you get to Adelaide." That's what we thought he said, but we realised he actually said, "Don't stop until you get to Adelaide River." But he forgot the river. Only with Alf Stretton and that other policeman named Whitnell. They were the two that, Whitnell was the driver and Alfie Stretton was the passenger. That was all right. I mean, the administrator was still there, and from his point of view, the army had not declared military law or anything like that in the territory. So as far as the administrator was concerned, he was the boss. And that's when he said, "They're my staff, they're going to Alice Springs." So I'm glad he did. The administrator did have a lot of control at that stage, but shortly after that, when they declared military rule, that's when the army took over, and he went to Alice Springs himself then, and I think he finished up in Canberra or somewhere. During the war, he didn't stay in Alice Springs. All I know was I was on the back of a truck going south. And we were 4 of us on the back of the truck, and we were hanging on for grim death at half times. The only ones I used to see were those that were refugees who were coming through on the trucks that were coming through from Darwin, the convoys that were coming through from Darwin.